Donald Trump's name is all over these files. All over it. I mean, thousands and thousands of times.
But there are clearly co-conspirators in here that they can name. Okay, I mean, in the documents I saw, we got pictures and their names. They're talking about sourcing girls.
One Republican who saw those unredacted files today is one of the lawmakers who actually wrote the law forcing their release ultimately. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie is my next source here tonight. And thank you, sir, for being here. That was Jamie Raskin and Jared Moskowitz's takeaway. Obviously, we already knew Trump's name was mentioned in the files. You can see that publicly. What was your takeaway from what you saw behind there?
Well, Jared is right. There are co-conspirators named in these files that have been redacted. And so I was surprised to find the names of 6 men in there. One is a sultan. He may not be a co-conspirator, but he's the one who sent the torture video. Another is a high-profile CEO, retired, who was listed as a co-conspirator, literally listed as a co-conspirator on FBI documents, and he had been redacted, and his picture and his name. And then there were 4 men that are kind of in a list of 20 that includes Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and some victims, and I was able to find those 4 names. So 6 names in there. I'm asking the DOJ to unredact.
So you had said that on Twitter. Todd Blanche, who's the Deputy Attorney General on the Sultan part, responded tonight and said, he quote tweeted you and said, you looked at the document, you know it's an email address that was redacted. The law requires redactions for personally identifiable information, including an email address. And he said the Sultan's name is available unredacted in the files. He says, be honest and stop grandstanding.
No, they redacted the email. Now, it may be a mistake on their part, or maybe they didn't intend to redact the Sultan's involvement in this torture video, but it is the Sultan's email. And then I put the Sultan's email back into their computer and found the Sultan's name. This is something you can't do at home. You can't do on the internet. And so I had to go in there and find it. This is an example of something, maybe it wasn't intentional on their part. I'd like to hear his take on the redaction of the CEO, who's listed as a co-conspirator in the 2019 child sex trafficking case.
So can I ask you, because, and I want to ask if this is the same person, Todd Blanche also said about that tonight that the document you're citing there has victim names in it.
Correct.
Seeming to say that's why there are redactions. He said, we have just unredacted Les Wexner's name from this document, but his name already appears in the file thousands of other times. And he says the Justice Department is hiding nothing. Is that the retired CEO that you're referencing?
It is. He unredacted it after I found it. That's a problem. And I'm glad they've admitted they made a mistake by redacting that.
So you're saying it was redacted when you went in there today, and after you tweeted that, they unredacted it?
Correct. Now he's got 4 other names he needs to unredact. Did he respond to that? There's a list of 20 people. And there's 4 men in there that need to be unredacted. Here's another troubling thing that I found.
Can you say who those 4 men are tonight?
I don't think they're well known. And so if I did, it wouldn't matter, but I could probably say them on the floor of the House. But I'll give the DOJ a chance to do what they did in these 2 examples, where I've discovered something and now they've responded. I want to give them a chance to respond and unredact those 4 names. But here's another problem, big problem that I discovered. There's big black screens of complete redactions, and you go in there and look on the computer. Sometimes you lift off the black ink and there's white ink redacting files. And so when we asked the people in the room who weren't responsible for the redactions, they said, oh, we think those are how the files were given to us. Now, those are 302 forms that come from the FBI. And the FBI...
Which are witness interview.
Correct.
Forms,
witness
basically.
interview forms, which would have the names of people who are implicated in crimes by the witnesses and the victims. We can't see those. Now, the DOJ can say, well, this is how the FBI gave those to us. Here's the problem with it. The legislation that Ro Khanna and I wrote makes the DOJ responsible for producing the documents, but it compels the FBI and U.S. Attorney Generals to turn over those documents. So they don't have the authority to just make random redactions. Here's another problem with the redactions. You know, the DOJ put up files and then they pulled them back down. And in December, they pulled them back down, redacted a little more and put them back up in some cases. Well, in this latest tranche, they've pulled files down. They haven't put them back up. And when I go over to the computers, I can't see the files they've pulled down. I have hard copies from where they were up on the internet.
But they're not even available internally to you, from what you can see.
As far as I can tell.
And you don't know why that is?
I have no idea why that is. And I would hope that when I go back to the DOJ tomorrow, they'll make those files available.
You mentioned that you may be able to say these names on the House floor. For people who don't know, that's because you're protected by a clause basically that provides immunity to representatives and senators for things that you say in your legislative sphere for those actions. Are you willing to say those names on the floor?
Oh, absolutely I am.
When?
If that will serve the survivors. If the survivors want me to, I'll do it. But in the meantime, this is the kind of progress we need to make. We need the DOJ to admit that these men were listed as co-conspirators in their own files and then to release their own files, which it looks like Todd Blanche just did tonight. He admitted that, and this is a very significant admission on his part, because you have the FBI director, Kash Patel, who came to Congress and told us there was nothing in these files that implicates any other men in sex trafficking of minors. Yet we've got a document now that Todd Blanche just unredacted tonight because I found it, that shows that Lex Wexner was a co-conspirator, according to the FBI, in 2019 when Trump was president.
And he's the former CEO of Victoria's Secret.
Correct.
That was known to have been in Epstein's circle. Can that moment when Kash Patel testified previously, he said they uncovered no credible information about Epstein trafficking underage girls to anyone besides himself. I want to play that moment of what he testified.
Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
I'm asking you, in that stuff, there's nothing that's related to any other any other people engaged with Epstein in underage sex.
That's correct. To my knowledge, no.
Given what you saw today, does that testimony ring true to you still?
No, the FBI's own documents from 2019 list Leslie Wexner as a co-conspirator in a child sex trafficking case. So, they've got some explaining to do.
Does that mean you think Kash Patel perjured himself?
I thought when he said that, maybe the trick he's using in his mind is that, well, he's considering it prostitution, and maybe what they have is evidence of sex trafficking of people who weren't minors. But what we see tonight is the charge that Lex Wexner was a co-conspirator to was child sex trafficking, and it's on the FBI's own documents from 2019.
So you're saying that should be investigated, basically?
Should absolutely be investigated. The other problem with what Kash Patel said there is we've got, I believe his name's Leon Black, is implicated in these files too, as somebody that, and these are the attorneys at DOJ and in the New York courts who were referencing a case on Black to the DOJ. They say that Epstein trafficked women to Leon Black.
The Justice Department previously said, we did not redact any names of men, only female victims. You're saying you saw men's names redacted today, though.
I did. I saw 4 in a list of 20. The other people on the list were Maxwell, Epstein, and mostly survivors that I recognized. And then 4 men who weren't trafficked because their date of birth predates 1970. Like they were all born in the 60s.
And you see no reason why those men's names are redacted in these files?
No, unless they were in some random lineup. But this requires the DOJ to respond to it, just like they responded to my 2 tweets tonight about the Sultan, who had heretofore not been known, and about Lex Wexner, who is in the files listed as a co-conspirator on the file that they unredacted tonight.
And you're going back tomorrow to view more documents, is that correct?
If I can just look at 40 documents and find 6 men, I'm going to go back and look at more of these millions of documents.
Congressman Thomas Massie, please keep us updated on what you see.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Thanks for your time tonight. Up next, a Senate Democrat is also talking.
You see the president and his family rake in billions while Americans struggle to make ends meet. Now, you remember, we were told that MAGA was for working class Americans. You remember that? But this is a government of, by, and for the ultra-rich. It is the wealthiest cabinet ever. This is the Epstein class. ruling our country.
That was Democratic Senator John Ossoff invoking Jeffrey Epstein as he was campaigning for re-election in his home state of Georgia this weekend. He's the only Democratic senator up for re-election in a state that the president won in 2024. He's arguably the most vulnerable Democrat in the Senate. So that message there, where he's not only leaning into affordability, but also Jeffrey Epstein here, as he's attempting to turn the president's own appeals to voters about rooting out the ruling elite on itself. Joining me tonight are my political sources, Van Jones, who's a former Obama administration official, and David Urban, a former Trump campaign advisor. And it's great to have you both here because, Van, first off, I'm just curious what you make of the argument there from Senator Ossoff. Do you think that that's going to break through with voters in terms of he's basically saying here's a permission structure for powerful people who were in Jeffrey Epstein's circles?
Look, I think it's a powerful line of argument. I do think that Donald Trump is assuming that nobody's going to notice that he's making billions of dollars, that he has all these billionaires in his cabinet, all this permission structure for data centers across the world that turn billionaires into trillionaires and drive everybody's energy cost up. I think MAGA is very vulnerable now. And but by the way, this whole Epstein thing is so disgusting because it looks like there's a system where there are no rules for the rich and no rights for the poor. There are people who are in jail doing 10 years, 20 years, 30 years for way less than the stuff that's coming out now. And somehow these people are still walking around with their yachts and stuff like that. So I think it's a very strong argument for him to make, and I hope other Democrats make it as well.
Well, and David, I mean, obviously people could say, well, the Epstein class includes Bill Clinton as well, as Republicans are trying to get him to testify about, why he's in these pictures that have surfaced as well. He's denied wrongdoing. But when you hear what Thomas Massie was just saying there, that the Justice Department unredacted one person's name, Les Wexner, after he asked why it was redacted in a certain document today, I mean, what do you think people think about how the Trump Justice Department has handled the revelation of these files?
Caitlin, I do agree with Van that more disclosure is needed. People need to be brought to justice in this case. There is a morass that it's hard to unwind millions and millions of documents. But what is clear by some of these documents that have come out recently is that Donald Trump, as early as 2006, informed the police department that he thought Jeffrey Epstein was a bad seed and that Ghislaine Maxwell was evil. He's on record in these files saying that. One of the victims' lawyers early on in 2009 said that Donald Trump was one of the only people that cooperated without a subpoena when he was investigating and trying to get to the bottom of some of these things. So what should be clear to Americans, and it is not perhaps because of this, how it's convoluted, and you hear from people like Senator Ossoff, is that Donald Trump was at the forefront of calling out Jeffrey Epstein. He was banned from his Mar-a-Lago state. But I agree with Van. We need to get to the bottom of this. It is, I've said this over and over, Caitlin. I don't know why they don't bring the entire Southern District of Florida in and put them on the stand in Congress and ask them exactly what happened, why they cut a sweetheart deal, why these names are redacted, why we don't know who these co-conspirators are. That should all be out there.
Well, I mean, Van, obviously on that front, Trump has denied knowing anything about Epstein's wrongdoing, but the fallout of this is so widespread. Speaking of Trump's cabinet, people like Thomas Massie are saying Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, should resign because he said before, we didn't have any contact after 2005. We thought it was creepy. Emails showed they were in contact after that. Not that there was any wrongdoing, but they were in contact. Chapel Rome, the singer, says tonight she has parted ways with her agency because the CEO, Casey Wasserman, was found to have race emails between him and Ghislaine Maxwell. She said today, as of today, I'm no longer represented by Wasserman, the talent agency led by Casey Wasserman. Chapel Roan says, I hold my team to the highest standards and have a duty to protect them as well. And she says no artist, agent, or employee should ever be expected to defend or overlook actions that conflict so deeply with our own moral values. I wonder what you make, Van, of how widespread this is.
Well, I mean, it's huge. And by the way, even in the UK, I mean, this may actually bring down the government in the UK. So this is a very big deal. And, if the only thing in here is that Donald Trump is a good guy who called the cops, why did Trump wait so long and have to be pushed to release all this stuff? I think that's why people are very, very doubtful about what's going on here, because there were just so many opportunities before Donald Trump for this guy to get the book thrown at him. He should have been under the prison, and yet somehow he kept getting away with it, And so I don't think anybody is safe yet as far as the American people coming to final judgment on this. And I do think it looks like there are two different classes of people. If you or anybody you know was doing anything remotely like this, you would be never heard from again. And yet there's a group of people that apparently can get away with this stuff, and they thought they were going to get away with it forever.
Listen, I agree with Van. More disclosures needed. We had 4 years during the Biden administration where nothing was accomplished. We've had more disclosure in this Trump administration than we had in 4 years of the Biden administration. So I'm for more transparency. I'm for more victims being compensated and taken care of and for getting the bottom. If you were associated with Jeffrey Epstein, shame on you. There's lots of names in there, people who knew about this, his plea deal, and yet still continue to associate themselves. And I think that'd be right. They're Democrats, Republicans. The list is long.
Yeah. And I should note, Casey Wasserman hasn't been accused of criminal wrongdoing, but he is one of those people whose name surfaced, as among others did, as David noted. David Urban, Van Jones, thank you both for joining here tonight. We'll stay on top of that, of course, of the developments as we hear more from lawmakers going behind closed